How well do you know the people you're surrounded by? When it comes to people, there's always more than meets the eye. Stories of trusted people becoming worst nightmares have been told repeatedly, and this was a lesson the Poulton family learned in the cruelest way possible. The nationwide search for their beautiful 4-year-old daughter who vanished from outside her front door ended with the arrest of a man who lived a few yards away. Welcome back to the Crime Lab channel. In today's video, we'll be looking at the story of Kali Poulton, who was killed by a friendly man in the neighborhood who lived a few blocks away from Kali's parents' house. Kali Poulton was born in 1989 to David and Judy Poulton. 3 years later, the couple split, and Judy moved to Rochester, New York, where she settled with her daughter. Despite their split, Kali's upbringing was barely affected because Judy and David maintained a friendly relationship. Kali was the most pleasant kid. Everyone loved her, not just because she was pretty, but because she had charm. Her smile was so beautiful and contagious, and she was referred to as the friendly kid with waist-length blonde hair and attractive dimples. Everyone admired her, and as a parent in a new neighborhood, Judy was naturally very protective of her daughter. In addition to her regular job, Judy took on a part-time marketing and delivery job. Apart from catering for extra costs, the money from this job was intended to fund the cost of Kali's trip to Disneyland the following summer, as Judy had promised her daughter. On the evening of May 23, 1993, Judy was busy with work, as she was every other evening. She placed inserts in magazines she would deliver later that evening, so she was trying to work fast. At about 6:45 p.m. that evening, Kali begged her mother to let her ride her bike outside. Judy saw that it was still bright outside and other children were playing as well, so she gave in and told Kali she could go out and ride her bike as long as she rode in front of the house. As Kali drove her bike back and forth on the sidewalk, Judy, who was busy with work, would check on her from time to time. Judy finished her tasks in no time and started loading all the magazines into her car, getting ready to deliver them. She planned to take Kali along with her and make a stop at the local McDonald's to grab a bite and have fun for a bit before they headed home. However, when Judy called for her daughter, she got no response. Judy continued to scream for her daughter, who was nowhere in view. Intuitively, she knew something was wrong, and panic set in immediately. With tears in her eyes, Judy began yelling Kali's name throughout the complex, and alarmed neighbors also began frantically searching for little Kali and her big bike. About 20 minutes into the search for Kali, Judy ran to Mark Christie, a 25-year-old who had moved to the complex approximately 6 weeks earlier with his girlfriend and 18-month-old son. Judy and Mark were somewhat familiar with each other because their kids used to play together at the playground. When she ran into him, Mark was carrying his son to the complex playground, and Judy noticed his high-top sneakers were untied and found it weird. Disregarding her intuition, Judy asked Mark if he had seen Kali. He responded no and continued walking. After the unfruitful search efforts for Kali, Judy called 911 to report her daughter's disappearance. Soon after firefighters and the police showed up, they bought dogs, searched the grounds, went door to door, and still didn't find Kali or her bike. The news of the disappearance of a 4-year-old blonde girl spread throughout the country like wildfire. Posters and pictures were put up everywhere, and the local police started carrying out their investigation. After a long night, 2 Monroe County Sheriff detectives arrived at Judy's door the next day. Despite her wrecked state, they asked tons of questions. Since she was the last person that saw Kali, she was the primary suspect in this case, and over the next couple of days, they would be frequent visitors of Judy's. On another one of their visits, investigators Patrick Crow, Thomas Passmore, and Gary Caiola asked if there was anyone in the neighborhood Judy considered a suspect, and she answered no. Then she had asked if anyone in the neighborhood had shown affection for Kali in an off-putting way. The question juggled Judy's memory, and she did have someone in mind. As aforementioned, Mark Christie was someone Judy had casually had conversations with at the playground because their kids played together. However, she started becoming suspicious when he made admiring remarks about her daughter. He would make comments like, "Your daughter's a very precious little girl," and he would go on to say, "I look at all the little girls out here, and your daughter is by far the prettiest." During one of their conversations, Mark asked Judy if Kali would tell her if anyone tried to touch her. Judy told the investigators that these creepy comments made Judy avoid contact with him. Immediately after speaking with Judy, the police contacted Mark Christie. After running a background check on him, they found out that Mark, who grew up in Hilton, New York, had a criminal record, but nothing linked to crime against children. When he was questioned about Kali's disappearance, he denied having anything to do with it. He even took a lie detector test, which he passed. The investigators knew something about him was off, but they let him go easy to prevent him from acquiring a lawyer who could prevent him from cooperating with them. 2 years went by without any answers regarding Kali's whereabouts or what had happened to her, and in all those years, Mark maintained his innocence. Most investigators erased the possibility of Mark being a suspect, but Inspectors Crow and Passmore, who were still convinced Mark was a principal suspect, maintained personal relationships with him. In August 1996, more than 2 years after Kali's disappearance, the police had a breakthrough in their case. Mark, who had moved to a different neighborhood with his family, had a fallout with his wife. In an attempt to gain sympathy from his wife, who had threatened to leave him after he started exhibiting strange behaviors, Mark confessed to his wife that he had killed Kali. Out of shock, his wife took her son, fled to her father's house, and contacted the police. Although Mark's wife's testimony was very serious, it was not enough to bring him down. Her testimony could be challenged in court, so the police needed to devise a way to make Mark confess to them. So later that night, Inspector Crow drove to Mark's apartment, and the two went out to have coffee together. At the coffee shop, after Inspector Crow negotiated a lenient sentence with him, Mark gave a complete account of what happened to Kali on the evening of May 23, 1993. According to Mark, Kali was indeed playing on her bike in front of her apartment. When he saw that Judy was not in sight, he lured Kali into his apartment. He told her she could play with him and his son, and Kali, in excitement, hurried over to his apartment. After letting her in, Kali went upstairs to his son's room, and they played together for about 10 minutes before they started hearing Judy scream her daughter's name. Knowing that Judy would be ferocious if she learned that Kali was at his apartment, Mark claimed to have panicked and grabbed Kali's neck, strangling her to death. Inspector Crow, convinced that Mark was leaving out a huge part of the story, asked if he sexually assaulted Kali, but he denied it. Mark went on to say that later that day, after the chaos Kali's disappearance caused, he took her body, placed it in the trunk of his car, and drove to the Nortel company where he was employed as a security guard. Mark went to the back of the building, opened an enclosed 30,000-gallon tank filled with liquid coolant, tied a heavy metal to Kali's body, and dropped it into the tank. At this point, Crow arrested Mark and drove to the station. His trial was held shortly after his detention, and he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. A few years after his sentence, Mark got additional sentences for offenses that were uncovered while he was in prison. Judy, who had always hoped that her daughter was alive somewhere, was utterly heartbroken by the news of her death. The police retrieved Kali's body, which was already heavily decomposed from the tank Mark dumped it in, and the little girl was laid to rest. Over the years, Judy said she had decided not to let grief consume her because she says the man responsible for her daughter's death isn't worth it. To this day, Mark is still in prison, and he isn't eligible for parole until 2041. Thank you for watching this video. Hit us up in the comments section and give us a thumbs up if you liked the video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos.